So, after the complete garbage fire that was Total War Warhammer 3's release, my taste for the game that I was most high for the last 8 months got a little bit bitter. So instead of playing the game further, which by law counts as self-harm until Creative Assembly fixes the game, I decided to give another Total War 3 a chance. One that was well reputed, but left in the shadow between the two massive mountains that were Warhammer 2 and Warhammer 3. Ni hao everyone, my name is Tran, and today I am gonna talk about Total War 3 Kingdoms. If you're unfamiliar to Total War games, the quick explanation is that the games are put in two modes. You have the turn-based campaign map and the real-time strategy battles. This game takes place shortly after Cao Cao's failed assassination of Dong Zhuo. Who is Dong Zhuo? A warlord controlling the emperor who is still a kid. So as the emperor's self-appointed guardian, he controls the Han Empire, which is most of China. Please have mercy on me, actual Three Kingdoms historians. I am just loosely summarizing to get back to the game review part. First thing you do is picking a campaign. By that I mean you pick the Rise of Warlords, or something like that. It's the default one. There are two styles to play this game. You can play Romance mode or Records mode. Pick Romance if you care more about your generals doing all the work, like in a Musou game, and your retinues are mainly there as moral support. Or Records if you want your armies to not feel like throwing hamsters with toothpicks against a starved coyote, and actually be able to deal with red and green color generals. More on those guys later. Once you made up your mind on that, you get to the fun part, which is picking a faction. Honestly, don't put too much brain power on this one, like me, who sat there for 40 minutes just paging through the leaders to pick one, backward and forward. I couldn't make up my mind. If you can't think of one you want to try out, just pick one of the recommended ones. Each faction has an average of 2 to 3 unique units, some of them being an upgraded version of one of the other unique units. From what I see, most of them are like early to mid-tier units, and some factions also have modified buildings, replacing default ones. Once you have picked a faction, the goal is pretty much the same: become Emperor of China. But the road there is where factions differs. For instance, Wang Zhao and Liu Bei are good at forming friendships in the form of alliances and coalitions. What's the difference? Basically, a coalition is the second floor in the hobby shop where you share interests with strangers. Alliances is when you invite selected few of those people to play in your basement instead. Meanwhile, other factions like Kong Rong is all about the money and the trade monopoly, using that as their diplomatic footholding. And Cao Cao can spend his unique resource to manipulate or debuff other factions. But how do we get there? First step is getting enough street cred to build up your rep. Getting new titles until you reach King. Once you hit King, you will declare yourself Emperor, and if no one else has done that before you done it, 2 other factions will as well. And now, each of your capitals has become a seat of power. Whoever controls all 3 becomes Emperor, and most likely owns enough land to hit the secondary requirement of owning X amount of towns, or commanderies as they call it. There are different ways to earn this cred, mainly from upgrading cities and owning more cities, and in some cases winning battles, as well as building specific buildings and faction-tied ways. Speaking of cities, there are many different ones. Well, the main cities are the same, but the towns tied to them will decide how you approach economy. Industry towns like mines and commerce towns like seaports and spice will get you the most money. Then there's farmlands and the yellow towns that tends to be more unique and few, like a temple that helps you with the general well-being of your kingdom. Don't feel like you are forced to develop a farm commandery because you got a commandery with a food resource in it. If you already got enough rice and want to make more money, you can just plant a new Toys R Us there instead. Let's put infrastructure to the side for now and talk about the fighting. All those cool characters that showed up when you were picking a faction, those are your starting leaders and generals. Most of them will be generals on the field, but if you have someone with a really nice administration bonuses, you might put them on such duties instead. All generals comes in different colors. Yellow are your commanders. They buff soldiers in your army, and in romance mode, they have 1 or 2 abilities that will give a temporary and very powerful buffs. Red ones are your vanguards. They specialize in killing regular troops, while green ones, your champions, specialize in fighting other generals. If you do play on romance mode, you can easily have a single champion sweep the battle in your favor by dueling the enemy army's generals. Whichever generals don't accept duels, you just run up to and hit them with the champion. Then there are purple, your sentinels. They're the tanky line holders that won't die as easily with a focus on melee infantry. And finally, there's the blue strategists that focus on ranged warfare, aka archers, crossbowmen, and artillery. Each of these colors is also a stat on the character's list, which you can hover over. The most important ones to me is blue, which means more ammo for the general's retinue. A retinue is like 1 unit of soldiers under that general's command. Green is more health, and red is more damage. Mix and match armies you like with these generals to best suit your flavor. One thing to note is that units of the same color normally goes well with that type of general. Like shock cavalry that are red goes well with vanguards, and the green spear infantry with the champions. You can also see what each general can recruit in the small army tab, and what they can recruit later on once they're high level. I think the highest level is level 6 to unlock class specified units. There are many ways you can build your armies, but from my experience, cavalry and artillery are king, with infantry to support them, and stop cavalry from eating up your artillery. Most faction armies will feel samey once you experience all the different classification of troops. This game isn't Total War, Warhammer, where each faction is their own thing. There are subcultures, however, like bandits and the Nanman jungle factions that brings in different style of rosters, like the elephants from the start of this video. But it is what you bring to the fight that will matter. I've done artillery-centric armies, I have done cavalry, and a mix of everything. Personally, I like the purple dudes with the huge swords that just cleave through other infantry units. But I wouldn't make an entire army out of them just because of that. But I know if I send them in against other infantry, they'll most likely end up on top. How combat begins can be from many different reasons. A city being attacked, an army being attacked, or a laid out ambush where you deploy really close to the enemy army who cannot rearrange the default marching deployment, so you can pick and choose how you want to do it. Like having cavalry going straight for the artillery, or axemen rushing into archers, and so on. Good use of your general can pull you out from a dire situation. Knowing what each skill they have does, and using them at the right moment, can make an easy fight even easier, and a hard fight into a win. In record mode, generals generally acts as another unit of heavy cavalry, which works best running around the field, charging weaker units in the back. But of course, to start a battle at all, you're gonna need enemies. Depending on your faction, you're most likely to start off taking off lands from the Han Empire faction. It's mostly a big NPC faction that has some ties with the Emperor. Once those freebies are done, you will have to make a decision on where to expand next. And that's where diplomacy kicks in. The diplomacy in Free Kingdoms is really nice, and there are many ways to play with it. If someone is not willing to do a deal you want with them, you can help persuading them a little by giving them money or food if they're starving, or a bunch of clay pigs. Yeah, keep all the followers and baubles you get from events and executing generals. Those become fantastic bargaining chips for diplomatic deals. And never, ever, ever accept Saucer's deal to buy your battle axe for 70 copper coins. He knows what he's doing, and he is hoping that you don't know. The AI will often try to do this kind of deals when you end a turn with little to no coin in your bank, regardless of what your end turn income is. And as turns passes, you will slowly develop reforms. They are upgrades in the tech tree, and where you go from there will greatly impact your kingdom. Every 5 turns you get to pick a new reform, and you decide how deep you want to go into a category. There is no right and wrong, just pick what you think you will benefit most from. But always grab the passive public order bonuses from the yellow tech part of the tree. It comes really handy when your empire gets big. Speaking of public order, let's talk about corruption. Corruption is when your income slides into private pockets. Corruption increases naturally as your faction gets bigger. You can see how much it is disappearing by hovering over your income info. The way to counter this is for special buildings, reforms, and some characters when they're administrating can also reduce the corruption. So pick a direction to expand. Know when to take a break from warmongering, engage in diplomacy to make friends, at least for now, and enemies. Remember, no coalition is built to last forever. Eventually someone is going to try to turn a coalition into an alliance, which is a coalition but more strings attached. And eventually, that alliance is going to turn into someone's empire, which is like almost being subservient to that guy. The beauty of the game comes from stories you make by just playing through the campaign. Here, I'll give a snippet of my personal story while I was playing as Kong Rong. I start my campaign and I realize 2 things. 1, I have plenty of land around me, and 2, I have no wife, which bodes poorly for the heritage. After taking some land and an event prompt, now there's a full stack of angry peasants taking my capital. After claiming it back and finding a wife, I now find that my neighbor Liu Bei took all the goddamn land I wanted. It's fine, Liu Bei. Your demise will come in the future. But for now, how about a trade deal? Nope. Some other bastard already claimed his one trade deal. You see, you can't trade deal with everyone. You have a limited amount. You can get more from searching in the reform tree. Is the most common way to get more trade deals. There are some other ways, but like certain generals' talents, I think. Anyways. But for now, how about the coalition, along with Wang Zhao? And that one worked. So now I'm a coalition with Wang Zhao and Liu Bei. I now have baby, but barely any land. But I am slowly getting more trade monopoly. I buy some rice from Wang Zhao so I can feed my own people, and now I look to the north. Many profitable commanderies there waiting to produce revenue. Luckily, no one nearby really likes Gongsun Zan, so I declare my first proper war. Now I have 2 people who don't like me, Gongsun Zan and my wife, who hasn't liked me ever since I disinherited her for the sake of our son becoming my inheritor. Really thought she'd be happy with our kid being the next for the throne, but apparently she wanted that for herself. After claiming a few lands of Gongsun Zan, he asked for peace. I'm fine with this because I realized that in the south, Liu Bei is losing to his former trade partner, and to me that's free land to claim for myself. Also, now I have trade monopoly with Liu Bei, since he went to war with his former trade buddy. It was empty and I took it as soon as I realized. What goes around comes around. And only in those 2 hours I had multiple moments just getting through the early game. So who knows what will happen from here onwards. And there you have it. An excellent strategy game with a lot of fun diplomatic shenanigans, satisfying real-time combat functions, and the option to go superhero mode or tactical army mode depending on what you prefer yourself. My first playthrough took a little over 30 hours, but now that I have better grip of the game's mechanics, I feel I can cut down that time quite a bit, as evident by other campaigns I started playing afterwards. I want to thank you all for watching my video. You can find me streaming over at twitch.tv/Travelton, and my Twitter is in the description, where I post when I go live and when new videos comes out. So enjoy, and have a good one. And until next time.
おかえり、ドクター。